Well, hello and welcome again to Watch What You Eat with Carolyn O'Neill. I am your host, Carolyn O'Neill. I'm a registered dietitian, food journalist, and, just a quick from the top, a cavalcade of stars of great experts we have on the show. And Watch What You Eat is really about watching what's trending in food, telling you what to watch out for, what's best for your budget and your body. And of course, we like to watch. We like to watch delicious foods, and we're seeking the very best in food, nutrition, and cuisine, and covering everything, really, every topic from pate to pesticides. We're a proud member of the Spoon Podcast Network, and today's episode starring Rosanne Rust, who is a friend and colleague. You can see I pick a lot of my friends and colleagues because I trust them, I admire them, I love their work they do. Rosanne, like me, is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and our topic today is don't throw cash in the trash. And we all know how expensive groceries can be, not just the eggs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Rosanne is an author. She's written several cookbooks. And the one that we're focusing on today is Zero Waste Cooking for Dummies. Okay. I love that we're talking about trash. We're talking about dummies. But we're really going to get serious and a little bit silly, but hopefully with some great tips for people to when you're shopping, when you're cooking, when you're storing foods, when you've got some odd things, maybe in the freezer, right? The pantry, the fridge, you're like, what can I do with this so they don't go to waste? We're going to be a little creative there. And Rosanne has worked in so many parts of healthcare as a dietitian and education settings. Really, education is her thing. That's why she writes these books for consumers. And she really has a great mission to deliver real life advice. Of course, it's evidence-based on nutrition research and just to help people eat great foods and have great health. So, Rosanne, welcome to Watch What You Eat.
Thank you, Carolyn. That's it. We want to help people. We want them to relax and have fun.
Well, while we're not having fun, we look at some of these statistics about how much food is getting wasted, and it certainly makes us feel bad, guilty, shocked in many ways. Just let's set the scene for how much food is wasted. And folks, if you're listening, we're not necessarily looking at you, but just in general.
Yes. So 30 to 40% of all food in the US is wasted. And that cash in the trash part, $1,500, maybe even upwards to $1,800 per household per year is thrown away. So it's food in the garbage is cash in the trash, and it's also nutrition in the trash.
And when we think about it, our training as registered dietitians, I'm old enough to admit that actually I was in the School of Home Economics at Florida State University in Tallahassee. And home ec, it's making a comeback. Home ec is making a
It needs
comeback.
to.
And I also remember how the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they still do have that thrifty food plan, where I think it was the job of somebody, just sitting there doing the numbers and doing the shopping to figure out what can you do to buy groceries that can really stretch your food dollar. So before we talk about what we're throwing away, Rosanne, as a dietitian, do you have some tips just on, I don't want to say bargain shopping, but some guidelines for shopping for groceries so your food dollar does stretch further?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the USDA food plans. And as dietitians, we often hear about meal planning, which sounds like this elaborate, what am I going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? But life really doesn't always work out that way. So I recommend food planning and starting to kind of back up before you go to the grocery store and think about what do you have in your kitchen? What is in your refrigerator? What is in your freezer? What is in your pantry? Because when I wrote this book, I tried to do my best. I was aware of food waste, but once I started doing the research and started writing about strategies, I started to change my own behavior. And that included not depending on my brain to remember what I have when I go to the grocery store, because then you end up buying more of what you already have or things that you don't need. So I always like to recommend making sure you take that inventory and then everything that goes into your cart once you're in the store, look at it and what are you going to do with it? Like you should know right then, are you going to use it, cook it, freeze it, store it? What are you going to do with it?
All right, so let's kind of close our eyes, if you will, folks. So unless you're driving your car right now, don't close your eyes. Um, what are the categories of foods? I mean, obviously, I'm thinking of the fridge. I'm thinking of what are the categories of foods that we're buying?
Buying or wasting or
Well,
both?
just buying, that we should have, like, let's say we want to set up a pantry for success, for
Right.
taste, nutrition, and for reducing food waste.
Yeah, let's start with the pantry. You have your dry goods. These could be things like rice, pasta, other kinds of grains, cereals, and then you may have some canned goods that are really useful to have in the pantry. Canned tomatoes, canned vegetables, any sort of canned vegetable. You can do a lot with canned tomatoes. And then when you switch to your the fresh section in your fridge, you may have some fresh forms of those vegetables, fresh fruit, and of course, your dairy products, milk. A lot of people are doing dairy alternatives, those kinds of things, yogurt, sour cream, those kinds of basic things. And then your fresh meats or your cured meats are going to be in the fridge too. Of course, you almost always have a frozen or canned alternative to a lot of the things in your refrigerator. Other than that dairy group, you've got canned fruits and vegetables. You also have canned meats, canned chicken, canned tuna, canned salmon. Those are still very nutritious. And then we can go into the freezer where we have other opportunities to either store the food we buy ourselves or purchase foods that are already frozen. And there's a lot of misconceptions about frozen foods that we
Mm.
purchase. Sometimes people always think fresh is best. Well, if you buy fresh produce, for instance, and you never get around to cooking it and eating it, then that's not really the best choice for you. But if you have something in the freezer like frozen peas or broccoli, or there's all kinds of great varieties of mixed vegetable dishes available now. And that freezing process locks in nutrition. And it's
I
been
like to
modernized.
Yeah, and, I read a description once, Roseanne, about that, freezing is nature's pause button,
Yes.
okay?
Love it.
So,
Absolutely.
it's like you've got the frozen vegetables, and maybe as dietitians, we're not talking about the broccoli and the cream sauce or the cheese sauce with the bacon crumbles. You can add some of that later, but
Yeah,
still, the
not too
basic
many
frozen
extras.
veg, right?
Right. Right. And that allows you then to work with that frozen vegetable the same way you would a fresh vegetable. You can roast it and then, as you said, add the flavors, mix it into a dish as what it is: frozen broccoli, frozen cauliflower, whatever. But you mentioned the pause. It's not just pausing on the availability of the produce, it's pausing on nutrition too. So all that nutrition is locked in when that fruit or vegetable is picked and then very quickly frozen. So the nutrition is there.
That is interesting because I think a lot of people have the misconception that, oh, frozen vegetables and or fruits, um, have less nutrition than
Yes,
fresh, or even that canned are somehow the second class citizen, right, to
absolutely.
fresh. I
Absolutely.
know that you and I have learned together on some trips, visiting the tomato people who specialize in, what do they say, from field to sealed very
Right.
quickly,
From
canned
field to can.
tomatoes,
Yes.
and so you get this great concentration of gorgeous tomato flavors. Of course, the varieties are chosen for that particular purpose so that they are super flavorful, and it actually concentrates the nutrition, like lycopene is higher, vitamin A is higher
Absolutely.
in the canned tomatoes. So again, folks, when you are, shopping, what is that other advice that people used to get, Roseanne? Oh, shop the perimeter of the store, as if
Right.
to say, well, by the way, that's where the bakery and the beer is, so, I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know where that came from, but still, in the middle, that's where you do find, right, your rice and
Right.
your
All of
whole
those.
grains, your cereals, and, of course, the canned veg and beans and fruits, so should you what about the sodium? What's your recommendation as a dietitian? Because I know you're also the author of the DASH diet, which is a very important, and tell everybody what DASH stands for and why you really care, of course, about sodium and health, heart healthy food choices.
Yes, sodium's important too. And DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Hypertension being the medical term for high blood pressure, which is very common, especially in people over 55. And sodium in canned goods, especially canned soups or canned vegetables, can be higher, absolutely, than a fresh counterpart or a frozen counterpart, as long as that frozen is just the vegetable and not any of those cheese and butter sauces and so forth. But we're adding sodium when we're cooking too, and there's a lot of sources of sodium in the diet. So I recommend some reduced sodium options in canned vegetables when it's possible, and you're still getting the vegetable. So we don't want to just single out sodium, because you're also getting all of the nutrition, the vitamins, the minerals, the potassium, and so forth from that vegetable. And we want people to include more fruits and vegetables.
Now,
Uh,
you mentioned potassium. Now, a lot of folks might not know that potassium, I guess, is kind of, if you think of a seesaw, you've got sodium, we got to limit that, but the potassium is sort of the good guy. And so I do love the fact that we can say, hey, folks, look at fruits and vegetables, leafy greens, different foods. I guess even our dairy products are a good source of potassium, which
mhm.
actually helps uh, support healthy blood pressure, right?
Yeah,
So,
potassium helps lower blood pressure. And when you're thinking in terms of overall food waste and the goal of increasing your fruit and vegetable intake, I recommend a variety. You're still going to be purchasing some fresh fruits and vegetables, but also can have some canned and some frozen on hand, so that at the end of the day, how many fruits and vegetables are we supposed to be eating, people? A lot more than we are eating. About 3 to 4 servings of fruit and 3 to 4 servings of vegetables per day. Those servings are small, so it's totally doable. But when you have the option of canned and frozen to balance out the fresh, and then you don't have to go to the store all the time either, because those canned and frozen items stay in your kitchen very easily.
well, we're going to wind our way into talk about expiration and spoilage, but right now you just mentioned fresh veg and how it's great if you bought it, but if you don't eat it, it's just not only a waste, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of nutrition down the drain, or even if you're
Mhm.
composting it, it's still not getting the good nutrition, is not getting into you. What recommendations do you have for proper storage? And you talked about a food plan, not a meal plan, for buying fresh produce.
Storage is really important. And, a lot of youngsters, especially, get a lot of their information and inspiration from social media. And I have been seeing a lot of videos that go crazy with this storage, all these containers. Buy all these new containers and put all your stuff into that from this container to that container. But in terms of fruits and vegetables, you really want to store them properly and simply. For instance, the bag that the apples come in is a good bag to keep them in.
Hmm.
The industry does a lot of work to create packaging that's always getting better and better to preserve that food longer. So the clamshell that your berries come in keeps them from getting bruised, and you probably have seen that little pad that's in the bottom of your
Mhm.
raspberry or blueberry. That's to absorb the moisture. So every fruit and vegetable has a little bit of a different strategy, and I talk about that in my book. But let's give you a couple of examples. Berries and things that are delicate, like greens, you buy leafy greens, moisture is their enemy. So you don't want to have them staying wet. I even will put another paper towel sometimes
Yep,
in the package
yep.
to help absorb some of that moisture. Same with lettuce, you can wrap it in a paper towel. And then I think one of my most watched videos was, do you even know what those drawers are in your refrigerator?
No.
No, apparently everyone wanted to know. Those mysterious high and low humidity buttons. Most refrigerators are fairly archaic still in terms of very basic science. When that slider is open, it is low humidity and allows gases to escape the drawer. There's a hole for those gases to come
Oh.
out. So things that are high ethylene, that emit a high amount of ethylene, like pears and apples, will haste that ethylene hastens the ripening process. So you don't want to trap it in the drawer. You want to open that hole and get the ethylene out, and you don't want to store your lettuce with the apples. So it is important to keep a lot of your produce separate. That is why we often have two drawers in the refrigerator. That lettuce and those berries, on the other hand, you want to be in that closed position to keep them in a high humidity but low moisture situation.
You mentioned refrigerators, and this is more of a food safety kind of observation. Okay, so the prepackaged salads, it seems like I know they've improved over the years too, like whatever gases that they have in there, and the plastics that they use. And by the way, folks, you don't want necessarily no packaging, you want smart packaging. And Roseanne, you alluded to that, and each industry kind of designs it to keep their product safer, better tasting. Obviously, that protects the nutrients. But it does seem that some of these bag salads, the leafy greens, do get slimy earlier than you'd want them to, and therefore you are also wasting money by I'm not gonna eat the slimy stuff because I bet it's not safe.
No, no, we don't want to do that. And I think, again, that's where this strategy of, figuring out what are you putting in your cart and are you going to use it? And that balance of a variety of different kinds of packagings, fresh, frozen, canned. The bag salads are great. They're convenient. They help people eat more vegetables. My recommendation is if you enjoy using them, buy them when you're going to use them. I mean, with if you're going to put those in your cart, you pretty much need to make that salad within 2 or 3 days. On the other hand, you want to eat salads more often than 2 or 3 days, a week maybe. Romaine lettuce it lasts longer. It will last for weeks. And you can just chop it and wash it as you need it, and you're going to have salad for more days that way. So it's really about balancing what you put in your cart. When are you going that question? How am I going to use what I just put in my cart?
Yeah, and the fresh produce that we buy is not gonna come with a little expiration date on it. Often we have to, like, kinda look at it, touch it, smell it, that kind of a thing. I went through my pantry just, in advance of our interview, and I found some applesauce, okay, and those of you who can see the video, it's a little individual, container, and if you can't see it and I thought, "Wait, you know how sometimes they'll come in a multi-pack, and sometimes the
Sure.
expiration date is on the outside of the packet, but these are actually happily dated on each of the individual little applesauce thing, and this guy says, "Used by September the 3rd, 2026." I got plenty of time. I got plenty of time. Then I decided I would go a little further back in the pantry, Roseanne, and I found some cream of celery soup. Don't know why this was purchased or when. Oh, wait, I can tell you, though. I was supposed to have used this by February the 4th, 2023,
Uh-huh.
but is this can still good?
It probably is in terms of food safety. So let's talk a little bit about best by and use by dates and some strategies for maybe how we can organize our pantries so that we don't shove that 2023 can to the back. Those best by and use by dates are quality dates. They're food quality dates, and they're sometimes used for inventory. They are not food safety dates. So, in the case of a can, that soup, as long as it's not bulging, because
Mm.
we don't want botulism or bacteria
Or
that's
d or
growing
d
in
or,
there
like,
will make the
dented,
can
like, d they say
bulge.
avoid dented
Yes,
cans, right?
no dented,
Okay.
no bulging cans, but otherwise, it's still going to be food safe. It may not taste as good as it did in 2023, and if it's in the case of something like a baking mix, the baking powder might be not
Oh.
not really functional anymore, but it's not going to make us sick. So
Okay,
those
I
best
found
by dates and use by dates. I mean, bread especially. Some packaged buns and so forth. The quality may not be there, but if there's no visible mold, you can still eat them a week later than their best by date if they still look fresh and don't have any mold. So we do need to use our nose and our eyes.
and in small households, you could buy bread and keep it in the fridge or even keep it in the freezer if it's,
Mhm.
and then pull it out and toast it as you do. So lots of home ec kinda like really, nerdy nutrition tips. Again, long as I was in my pantry, I found some pasta, and it is, a beautiful box of ziti, and apparently the expiration date on this is September the 26th, so I thought it was 2026 when I read it real quick, but that was Actually, September 26, 2022. So I wrote with a Sharpie on the outside of the box because, these dates are small. They're often
Yeah.
hard to find
And
and tiny.
they fade sometimes.
And then, so I've got some pasta. It says I was supposed to use it in 2022, but I did not,
Yeah,
Roseanne.
and,
So,
I have to say that the number one strategy for wasting less food is buying less food. Again, you making sure there's a plan for everything that goes into your cart, and also not overbuying if you can help it. A big pantry like back in the day was, all the canned goods, and if you couldn't get out in winter, and you and I may have grown up that way, but now you could pretty much, go down to the Publix or the Piggly Wiggly or the Shop and Save or wherever you go, but a smaller pantry can help. And when you, as food nutrition experts, we were well versed in food safety and food service, first in, first out. So you want to kind of make those shelves convenient for you, that 2022 item is in the front, so you use it first. And again, this is where taking that inventory before you go shopping going forward in your zero waste kitchen plan can really help.
all right. So let's say somebody said, all right, I'm going to take a look at my pantry because I listened to Rosanne Rust on Watch What You Eat with Carolyn O'Neill, two registered dietitians who care about food, nutrition, and cuisine. And you got some random items there. I probably should really use these up before they expire. Any tips on getting creative with, like, you mentioned about like a recipe, if it calls for this, you could substitute that, or kind of get creative with us here because we do like to watch what we eat in delicious foods.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that we have AI available, that's one way to kind of generate a recipe out of random things. And I like to encourage people when they're trying to work on reducing their food waste to get creative and get a little courageous in terms of cooking. You don't have to follow a recipe to a T all of the time. So you're kind of, shopping your freezer, shopping your fridge. What do I have? Instead of going to the store to get all these items for a recipe, cook something out of what you've got. So if you use AI and plug in, carrots, 3-year-old pasta, a jar of tomatoes, and see what comes up. And then you can make a meal out of what you have. And then you probably have created, another menu to go for your weekly file and routine.
I think that, there's absolutely nothing new about that globally, right? There was always the soup or the stew where bits and pieces of things, even in Italy, where and it made it taste so much better, putting in the heel of the Parmesan cheese for the
Mhm.
umami and flavor, even that was not
Absolutely.
wasted. We talk about nose to tail, we talk about, field to table, but I mean, using bits of leftover cheese just to flavor something, when maybe it's too hard
Yeah.
to have with your cheese and crackers, but you throw it into a sauce, a soup, a
Yeah,
stew.
yeah. Or have, a smorgasbord night where put all the little bits and pieces out and everyone can kind of do a snack board. I grew up with Italian grandparents, and we bought a loaf of Italian bread every week, and it was fresh. So unless you're going to eat it in 2 days, it's going to get hard as a rock. So we had fresh breadcrumbs. My mother made fresh breadcrumbs every week, and she just kept adding it to the jar. And then you use those for meatballs or meatloaf or whatever. But a lot of these items of days gone by stem from not wanting to waste food or money. French toast, that's another good use of stale bread.
Wait, bread pudding.
Hmm.
So actually, probably some of the most best loved dishes around the world was really somebody's attempt, and which succeeded greatly, of using what would have gone to waste to create a beautiful meal.
Absolutely. I mean, cooking is an experiment that we can do every day in our own kitchens.
We talk about silly, we talk about serious, but Roseanne, with food safety in mind, just kind of share, what are some of the dangers? How, when things go horribly wrong, what would you like to caution people about really throwing away and not, they say when in doubt, throw it out. Walk us through that.
Right. My book's titled Zero Waste Cooking, and we really can never get to zero waste. That's really not attainable, but lower waste. There's absolutely some times when you have to throw away food in terms of food safety. I mentioned, using our nose and our eyes to judge some foods, things like dairy products that will curdle. Your nose will let you know that that's not good. So you have to throw it away. We were talking before the show about power outages, and if your refrigerator is out, the food safety rule is 2 hours. You got to keep it cold or keep it hot for 2 hours. After that, if it's no longer held at temperature, it's not safe. So if you have a power outage, you really need to ice those things down and keep them cold. And in some cases, you have to throw it away. I live in Florida now, and the last few hurricane seasons have been rough. We've thrown food away because 5 days, 6 days without power, it's hard to keep everything. You either try to eat it, and we did that, or some of it just isn't going to make it.
And you had a really good tip I'd love for you to share, Roseanne. If people travel, or maybe they are going to their lake house, beach house, whatever, that kind of a thing, and they're gone for a while. You don't know if the power went out. And
Mhm.
you talked about how archaic refrigerators are. I mean, our phones tell us, right? Like how long we talked on the phone today and what time the conference. But refrigerators don't tell us when the power went out, how long it was off. And oh, by the way, on the Spoon, the website, Mike Wolf, our founder, has a great article on how refrigerators really do need to catch up. But tell us your tip, which is really low tech, but super
Really low
smart.
tech, really low
Okay.
tech. So if you are going away, you can simply put a glass of water in the refrigerator, or I'm sorry, in the freezer with a penny in it. Well, wait a minute. Back up. Put a glass of water in your freezer a few days before you go so it freezes. So you've got a cup of water, it's a solid block of ice. Then put a penny or a bean or some little object on it before you leave. If that object is in the cup when you come home, because if you're away for a week and the power went off, everything melted and that cup was water, but now you came home and it's ice again. But if that penny's on the bottom, then you had a total
Mm.
meltdown in your freezer. So that's one
Mm.
very low tech,
No, I love that because even if you have, let's say, an old-timey, like, ice cube tray,
right?
again, it's frozen, you put,
Hmm.
a little bean or a penny on top, and if you come
Yeah.
back and that penny's
And
at the bottom,
uh-huh.
that means something was horribly wrong while you were gone, and while y of course, you wouldn't use those ice cubes. If you did, wouldn't matter as long as you didn't swallow the penny. But what really scares me, what if there was frozen chicken in there and
Yeah.
you get home and
Everything defrosted.
it had already defrosted,
Yeah.
it may have started to decompose, bacteria could have grown, and it's refrozen,
Mhm.
but you never would have
You
known,
never
and
would have
then you
known because
prepare that. That scares the heck out of me,
yeah, and it
okay?
still looks like a piece of frozen chicken or fish or
Uh-huh.
whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get some pennies and not using them anymore when I'm shopping, so I'm gonna put them in my freezer, but that's really, really good tip, for people who, aren't at home to keep track of when their power goes out. So, shout
Yeah.
out to the refrigerator companies, this might be something you might wanna do, but you
I
know what?
love that.
I don't need to buy a new $4,000 refrigerator that has the technology to tell me the power went out when I've got a bean or a penny, okay?
You can just put a
So,
penny
thanks
in
for
on top
saving,
of your ice tray.
us money there too. Well, Roseanne, we because bacteria, what is it? The danger zone
Mhm.
is between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that means, folks, is that if it's below 40, you're safe. If it's above 140, you're safe because you're cooking something, whatever. But that's why, I mean, if you don't have a refrigerator thermometer, you can easily get one for very inexpensive and
Mhm.
just pop it in the fridge. And a lot of refrigerators now will tell you the internal temperature. They don't tell you if it was off for a while. So this danger zone is what you want to avoid. And as Roseanne Rust just told us, you don't want really 2 to 3 hours. You don't want it hanging out in that danger zone. And
No.
again,
38 your refrigerator should be 38 degrees, and, yeah, the freezer is 0.
okay. And you know what? That also will keep your milk fresher longer, your cheeses fresher
Mm,
longer. So it's not just food safety thing. And then the flavors are protected because the temperature is right.
yeah. And
Um,
speaking of milk, that
mm,
that makes me think about storing milk. Because before I wrote my book, I often stored milk on the top shelf, but the bottom shelf is the coldest. And some refrigerators are even designed to have it on the door, which is really not a great idea because you're opening that all the time. So there's a little bit of temperature change every time you open and close the door. So your dairy products do best at the bottom, on the bottom shelf.
I like that. I
Um,
like that. And of course,
mhm,
if I do like buying the not because I'm buying everything organic, but the ultra pasteurized, so
mhm,
the milk has been, heated up to a higher level, so it tends to last longer as
it
well.
does.
Therefore, it's a bit of a moneymaker. So, okay, so let's get back to the whole food waste thing. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get back to food waste. It is a lot. It may be overwhelming to people to think, "Oh my gosh, it's enough trouble to make a food plan. I gotta go grocery shopping. I gotta figure out where it goes, and then I gotta look at the expiration dates." Um, but what's really our motivation for doing this?
Well, your motivation is saving money and improving your overall nutrition quality of your diet. Because my personal hypothesis, I don't have any data to back this up, but I really feel that when you any behavior change, any little bit of a different, change in your routine, at first takes a little bit of time. But once you do those simple things of taking inventory, going to the store, thinking about how am I going to use what I'm buying, and then learning how to store it properly, you kind of simplify your life in the end because you have less choices, you have less things to inventory and go through, you're using what you have, and ultimately you're probably eating more fruits and vegetables because you decide I'm no longer just going to throw all these fresh vegetables in my cart to make myself feel good. I'm going to actually buy what I can use and then cook it and eat it. So, in the long run, I think it's going to improve your nutrition status and it's definitely going to save you money.
You know,
And
um,
perhaps time too in the long run, because
okay,
you're
so
buying things that you can use, and you don't have to go back to the store and rebuy things that you're throwing away.
okay, all right, win, win, win. Here's a couple of my favorite things when I see in fridges, and by the way, this is my mom's fridge. I love those mysterious packages of aluminum foil, in the back of the fridge, and then, "What is this?" "Well, I don't remember." "Open it up." Or how about you look in the freezer and somebody was smart enough or nice enough to put it, maybe you made a beautiful, you know, uh chicken cordon bleu or something and you put it in the container, but you're like, "I wonder what that was because I can't really see it anymore." So, again, putting I am
Label it.
label it, and what should
Label
we
it.
put on that label? I guess what it is,
What
and
it is and the date you put it in the freezer or in the refrigerator. And using clear glass containers so you can see what you have left over in the refrigerator. We could do a whole entire podcast on leftovers, let me tell you, because
oh,
that is a huge food waste category.
well, we don't call them leftovers anymore, Roseanne, we call them planned-overs, don't we?
I love it. Leftover
Yeah.
makeovers, planned over.
Oh, and what
Yes, we
about,
want to
like, those,
enjoy those
on
leftovers.
Instagram, I think I saw with the fridgescaping, where people are actually decorating inside the refrigerators with, like, the little thing of flowers and,
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
getting into it. I think somebody even had, like, a little Barbie chandelier that they had in there, and, really, if you think
If
it's a
if
lot of
that
work,
helps you, motivates you to store food properly, then go for it.
yeah, we're all for it. So, this is good. All right. So, zero waste cooking for dummies. We have been hearing about food waste, and we'll just kind of like wrap it up in a minute or so here, Roseanne. We've been hearing about what a serious problem food waste is, and of course in the home, but it happens all over the place, in food service and all of that. And in
Mhm,
food service, they don't like throwing money away either because they've
mhm,
got that bottom line. Um, so where are we? You think where the message is getting across? And I know that when I was living in London, you would buy, eggs, like, there'd be a half dozen. You don't have to buy a dozen.
mhm.
And then, like, again, some people now are, like, maybe going to the big box shopping, and they're buying, like, 2 not now, maybe because of the shortage of things going on, but buying 2 dozen eggs at a time. So I like the fact that you could buy things in smaller packages, I hope that we kinda get to that and aren't hosed for it, because a lot of times, it's a whole thing, you buy more, you pay less.
Right,
That
right.
seems opposite of what we're trying to teach people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we could do in our food landscape, and I really feel that, the US is way behind on having a really strategic plan for reducing food waste. There was a goal set that by 2030, we would reduce our food waste by half. There's no way we're getting to that goal because that's only 4 or 5 years away. But as consumers, we can control what we do in our homes, and that helps. I see it picking up in terms of being on top of mind for more companies and more policy, and certainly in the household a little bit in the US. The rest of the world, a lot of the food waste news that I get fed to me is from other parts of the world. And in many cases, they're doing it out of necessity, because the other part of this story is we have a hunger problem. So we're wasting all of this food, and yet I believe the stat is 1 in 5 children are hungry. So there's imbalance of this imbalanced situation where people are hungry and yet we're throwing away food. So we need
Yeah.
to get that food that we're wasting, prevent that waste, and redirect it to people who need it, and then waste less ourselves
Okay,
at home.
absolutely, because, I think it's actually a conundrum of mankind, but,
Mhm.
advice like this is super helpful. I remember, just to kind of have an image to share with y'all as we winded up with Rosanne Rust and zero waste cooking. I was interviewing a chef in San Francisco, and he was getting ready for the interview, and he had some tomatoes that were about to go south. Okay, they couldn't really
Mhm.
use them on the salad bar or whatever they
Right,
had at the time, and he put them on a sheet pan and sprinkled the salt and olive oil, and maybe there was some chopped up garlic. And he says, "I'll be with you in a moment." And I said, "What do you?" He goes, "Oh, no, no, these tomatoes. I'll just put them in the oven right now to kind of dry them out and use them in a sauce." He wasn't going to make anything at that moment, but it
right.
was like to get them in there. So it's almost like you're pre-prepping, not for what you're gonna make at that moment, but for later. And it was like you didn't wanna throw away those gorgeous tomatoes, but you could save them for later. So get
Yes.
creative, folks, with
Yep.
your bits,
Cooking
your
it will make it
pieces.
last longer.
Yeah, bits and pieces, and just know that, um my mother was Scottish, so everything was about saving money, and, I think I watched her run a very tight ship. Maybe I don't know if that's part of my dietitian nerdiness now. But
Mhm.
Roseanne, thank you so much. I look forward to having you back, and we are gonna talk, I think, a little bit
Yes.
more about, food storage, planned overs, how to plan with
Yes, food
leftovers.
storage, if we can play a game called Will It Rot or Will It Wilt?
How long will this last? Oh gosh. And, well, thank you so much,
Doing
and
more with less.
that's right. Well,
That's
Roseanne,
your
I'm gonna
goal.
put the notes, in our show notes of all your tips. She's given great tips here, which you don't have to memorize, and you can certainly look at them on our show notes. Rosanne Rush, registered dietitian, author of Zero Waste Cooking for Dummies, and a good friend, good colleague. I'm Carolyn O'Neill, and you're always invited to add Watch What You Eat to your podcast menu.